So, and Adam Effler is driving, so I'll ask Adam to move to the next slide, please. So I'm Maura Toole. And Adam, can you... We just want to get Adam to move to the next slide. We'll get him going there. Give us just one moment. Adam, how about if I share and I'll keep going? Just bear with us one moment, please. Thank you, everyone. So we get our screens working here. Okay, looks like we'll start again. Okay, thank you, Adam. So I'm Maura Toole. I am a volunteer and I'm also the leader of the Seneca Lake Pure Waters Lake Friendly Living Program. And I'm joined by team members of our Lake Friendly Living Coalition of the Finger Lakes, Laura Bailey, who is the Yates County Cornell Cooperative Extension Natural Resources Educator. And she's also the Aquatic Invasive Species Advisor for the Keuka Lake Association. And then Adam Effler, he is the Executive Director of the Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council. Next slide, please. So our Seneca, Keuka, and Owasco Lake representatives here today are joined we'll get that going. So it looks like we're still having difficulties with the screen movement. Again, appreciate your patience. Okay, we're on. So we are joined by Canandaigua, Cayuga, Atisco, and the Skinny Atlas Lake organizations, and we work as a coalition committed to protecting the health of our lakes. So this Lake Friendly Living Association Awareness Week of Education and Outreach is just one example of the many activities that we all can do together better than one lake trying to do it alone. So we want to acknowledge and appreciate the support from our sponsors and our partners, the Nature Conservancy and the Soil and Water District Councils, Cornell Cooperative Extension, and many of our municipal governments in the Finger Lakes region. So today, and I'm thinking we're going to work to get the presentation up there. Our goal is to provide an overview of practices that can be easily applied at your home or perhaps when you're enjoying recreational activities on the lake. And the practices are segmented into 4 main categories. And let's go one slide later, Adam, 2 slides later. Thank you, one more slide. Wonderful, one more slide. Thank you. So the practices are, again, in 4 main categories: minimize runoff, eliminate pollutants, capture and infiltrate, and manage and prevent aquatic plant growth and invasive species. Next slide. So let's first talk about runoff. Nature's flow of rain and snow onto land, we know, happens regularly and everywhere. This is called runoff. But what happens to runoff is very important. When runoff falls on natural surfaces, it's infiltrated into the ground. When it hits impermeable surfaces, such as pavement, driveways, even rooftops, it moves across the surface and it's not absorbed. And so instead, it runs into waterways like a stream or a creek, which all eventually move into the lake. Next slide. And as it moves, it picks up and carries harmful substances into the lake. You're seeing, here's the list: sediments that can have multiple negative effects on aquatic life and even the physical structure of the lake. Excess nutrients that can contribute to harmful algal blooms, and you've probably heard much about that in the last few years across the Finger Lakes, across New York State. Bacteria and pathogens that affect drinking water. Over 700,000 people in the Finger Lakes area rely on our Finger Lakes for quality drinking water. Ugly and man-made and harmful man-made debris, and also hazardous waste that poison aquatic life, including even road salt, which increases chloride levels in the lake. Next slide, please. So what can you do around your home to minimize runoff? 3 simple things. You can reduce impermeable surfaces, you can limit lawn size, and you can conserve and use water wisely. And we'll talk briefly about each of them. Next slide, please. So let's talk about reducing impermeable surfaces. As you walk around your home, are there areas that you might be able to convert to a more permeable surface? Maybe using porous pavers or stepping stones instead of concrete walkways? If you are considering a remodel project, think about how much hard surface you might be introducing, and maybe like example, roof lines, and maybe consider that something like building up instead of out. Next slide. So for lawn size, well, we know our lawns are beautiful and somewhat easy to maintain, but did you know that lawns are actually not as good for water absorption compared to trees and shrubs and plants? Native gardens can actually be easier to maintain. They're beautiful and they do a lot to reduce runoff. Next slide. And here's one of our webinars this week. It's all about native gardening. And this is an expert, Dan Siegel from Plantum Nursery, and he's going to be talking about easy lake-friendly native plants to put in your garden. And this is being held on Wednesday, May 5th at 1 p.m. And again, you can see the website at the end or on your chat. This is where you can register. Next slide. So lastly, let's talk about water use. While our lakes offer an abundance of water, when using water on land, we want to use it wisely in order to prevent more than what the land can absorb. So consider these tips. We just talked about native plants and ways you can learn a lot more. Mulch is really a decorative, easy to access, and very functional method to retain moisture. A rain barrel is another very decorative and functional tool, and it particularly comes really handy in the summer months when you get those hot, dry days and you don't have water access. You have it right there with your rain barrel. So even it's something as simple as using a broom to sweep your driveway or your sidewalks instead of your hose with water. And then lastly, if you do have an irrigation system, here are some helpful tips. So simple things. These are the simple ways to start minimizing runoff. So now let's talk about our second main category, which is eliminating pollutants. And I'm going to turn it over to Laura Bailey from Keuka Lake to talk to you about that.
Thanks, Maura. So I'm going to go over some ways with you that can help protect water quality by eliminating pollutants, by minimizing erosion, using good lawn care practices, how to maintain your septic system, not flushing prescription drugs, maintaining vehicles, watercrafts, and other recreational vehicles, reducing household hazardous waste, and cleaning up after your pet. So minimizing erosion is especially important when planning a construction project or other activity that disturbs the soil. So to help prevent sediment from entering a water body during construction or maybe a major landscaping activity, make sure that you preserve existing vegetation wherever possible. Plan to avoid parking or driving heavy equipment near trees, and build a gravel access road to the actual site of the work to help minimize overall site compaction. Make sure to install silt fences or straw bales around work areas to trap sediment, and locate any soil piles away from the road or water, and protect those soil piles with silt fences or hay bales as well. And then if you're expecting rain, keep them covered with a tarp to prevent sediment washing away and into our water bodies. And then following construction activities, plan to replant that area as soon as possible. And until vegetation has reestablished, keep those erosion control measures in place, and always work to divert runoff around the disturbed area. So if you see that you have a little stream forming right through your work area, try to use some of those hay bales or other methods to kind of divert the water around the area so that it's not washing right through it and carrying sediment with it. Next. Good lawn care practices. So you may already be implementing a lot of good lawn care practices like purchasing fertilizer without phosphorus, but make sure that when you're applying it at the recommended rate. You're applying it in fall, which is the best time to fertilize, and that you check the weather before fertilizing and make sure that you don't fertilize right before a storm, and never apply fertilizer to frozen ground. And also consider skipping the fertilizer altogether or mulching your leaves and leaving lawn clippings as a natural fertilizer. And keep leaves and lawn clippings out of the street so that they don't make their way into our storm drains and water bodies, where they'll end up adding additional nutrients to our water bodies. And when mowing, adjust the blade higher to about 2.5 to 3.5 inches. This will help for a healthier lawn by forming better root structure of the grass, and it'll help to better intercept rain. And then use IPM or integrated pest management practices when trying to control pests or any unwanted species in the lawn. Like if you're trying to control mice or voles or other critters that you don't want around, consider IPM practices as your first option. Next. So here's a webinar to learn more about how our current landscaping designs and practices sometimes fail to support our native plants and animals, and in the long run, end up contributing to a declining biodiversity. So join Doug Talame on Monday, May 3rd at 10 a.m. to learn more about what you can do to help reverse declining biodiversity. Next. So let's move on to how to maintain your septic system and why it's important to make sure that you're maintaining your septic system. So maintaining your septic system protects nearby groundwater, the lake, and your health by preventing nitrogen, phosphorus, and disease-causing bacteria and virus contamination. And also make sure that you know the signs of a failed system. So if you see pooling water or muddy water around your tank, drain field, or in your basement, this might be a sign that it's time to check your septic system. And if you notice a foul odor coming from the area of the tank, or your toilet or sink are backing up when you flush or wash your laundry. And also if your grass is getting really bright green and starting to grow much faster and better than the grass in the rest of your lawn, those are some of the signs that it's time to check in on your septic system. Next. And then you should be regularly inspecting and pumping your septic system. You should probably have it inspected about every 2 to 3 years and probably pumped every 3 to 5 years, depending on the size and your usage. And then it's also really important to not dispose of household hazardous waste down the sink or in the toilets. Try to keep paints, chemicals, cleaners, gasoline, oil, and other toxic materials out of the septic system, because these materials end up killing the good bacteria in your septic system, and it doesn't work as well when you kill off the good bacteria. And then keep other things out of the drain that might lead to clogged pipes, such as diapers, coffee grounds, hygiene products, paper towels, and grease. And then make sure to care for your drain field by planting only grass or shallow rooted vegetation over top of it. And don't park or drive over your drain field. And make sure that water from eaves troughs, sub pumps, or other drains aren't being diverted right over the area of your drain field. Next. So don't flush your prescription drugs. There are many locations in your community that collect and properly dispose of prescription drugs, such as hospitals, pharmacies, and law enforcement facilities. These collection sites may offer on-site medicine drop-off boxes or mail-back programs. So please seek out these methods of disposal. But if you absolutely cannot dispose of your unused medications by dropping them off at a collection site, then as a very last option, please dispose of in the trash, but follow some steps before just tossing them into the trash. So it's recommended that you mix the prescription medicine with some water and then stir it into ashes, dirt, cat litter, or coffee grounds or any other really undesirable substance. And then place this into an outer container, such as a sealable bag or plastic tub, and seal that container with strong tape. Then dispose of these sealed drugs mixed with the undesirable substances as close to trash collection date as possible to help avoid any accidental or intentional misuse of the medication. And then definitely don't conceal any of these drugs in food because we don't want them to be accidentally consumed by humans, pets, or wildlife. Next. Maintain your vehicles, watercrafts, and other recreational vehicles. So fluids from cars, boats, and recreational vehicles can be detrimental to water quality. So make sure that your car isn't leaking fluids onto your driveway or onto the road. If you change your own oil, make sure that you do it properly by catching the oil in a pan. And if any oil does spill, don't wash it down to the drain. Use a special absorbent material and then properly dispose of that material. And if you wash your own vehicle at home, do so on the lawn rather than in the driveway or on another impermeable surface, or take it to the car wash to prevent this soapy water, which contains phosphorus and other chemicals that can harm fish and water quality from entering our water bodies. Next. And then try to reduce your household hazardous wastes. And when using them, use them properly and dispose of them properly. So try to use the smallest amounts possible. Make sure you're following the label and using the recommended amount. Don't try to use more than is recommended. And then when available, try to use non-toxic and biodegradable products. Recycle when you're able. Again, follow those label directions. Store materials properly to avoid leaks or spills. And then dispose of any unused hazardous products at waste collection events. Next. And then clean up after your pet. So make sure that you clean up after your pet when you're at home, at the park, and on the trail. So when runoff flows across these areas and makes its way to our creeks and streets and into our storm drains, it carries with it harmful bacteria as well as nitrogen and phosphorus. And when that pet waste ends up in our lakes or streams, it decays and uses up oxygen and sometimes releases ammonia. So please bag it and place it in the trash. And then just a friendly reminder that waterfowl are not pets, so we really shouldn't be feeding them. Although ducks and geese really like to eat the bread and other foods that we offer them, it doesn't provide them with the nutrition that they need. And then it also causes them to congregate in high numbers. And when they all congregate in those high numbers, it leads to a lot more quantities of waste, which ends up washing into our local waterways. And I am now going to hand it over to Adam Effler from the Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council to talk with you about ways to capture and infiltrate pollutants and manage and prevent aquatic invasive species.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Maura. Capturing stormwater and snow melt and allowing for infiltration into the ground, as well as vegetative uptake, are important steps to reducing unwanted runoff and pollutant discharges to water bodies. 3 recommendations for capturing and infiltration include planting and allowing for the growth of vegetative buffers, fostering a natural shoreline and considering associated ecosystem services, and adding rain gardens to the landscape. Vegetative buffers, or strips of natural vegetation along the shoreline of a water body or tributary, otherwise known as a watercourse, should cover 50 to 75% of a property's water frontage. Traditional, mostly mowed lawns are not recommended along a water body or watercourse. Traditional mowed and barren lawns may cause excessive plant and algal growth within an adjacent water body or watercourse, shoreline erosion and sedimentation, loss of wildlife habitat, and an increase in nuisance animals. Here is a Lake Friendly Living Awareness Week webinar to learn more about landscaping for shorelines. On May 6th at 3 p.m., as part of this Lake Friendly Living Awareness Week, Cornell Cooperative Extension of Onondaga County's Camille Marcotte will give her presentation entitled Landscaping for Cayuga Lake Shorelines. Consider the ecosystem services provided by a natural shoreline. Restoring a shoreline of a lake or water body with native plants restores ecosystem services that include food and shelter for local wildlife, shade for fish and wildlife, soil stabilization and reduced erosion, filtration of pollutants and sediments, absorption of nutrients, and deterrence of nuisance species. Further, natural shorelines can benefit landowners through increased privacy and a savings of time and money that would otherwise be associated with more common lawn maintenance activities, like mowing. Add rain gardens. Rain gardens allow the rain from rooftops, driveways, and patios to infiltrate into the ground instead of becoming runoff. They also help keep water clean by filtering it before it enters waterways, by helping alleviate flooding and drainage problems, enhancing the beauty of yards and communities, providing habitat and food for wildlife, and by the way, we recommend using natives. And lastly, they reduce the need for stormwater treatment structures in the community. Here is a webinar to learn even more about creating an earth-friendly landscape. On May 4th at 10 a.m., as part of this Lake Friendly Living Awareness Week, author Janet Allen will present on creating an earth-friendly landscape. Let's talk some about aquatic vegetation management and prevention. It is important to treat the cause of nuisance aquatic plant growth rather than looking for quick solutions. Also, it is critically important to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. Aquatic invasive species can have devastating impacts on lake ecosystems. Aquatic invasive species are detrimental to the ecosystem of a water body and overall water quality. How you manage aquatic life at your residence has an impact. Furthermore, lake recreational activities, including power and non-power boating and fishing, can enable the spread of invasive species. Focus on treating the cause to manage aquatic plant growth. The use of benthic mats, suction dredging, harvesting, and raking can be detrimental if not implemented properly. These actions may lead to destroyed fish habitat, stimulated increased plant growth or spreading in some scenarios and in some species. Factors and impacts should be closely assessed prior to implementation. Please consider contacting your regional soil and water conservation district or Cayuga County. These groups can offer more guidance and information on recommending control practices. Let's talk about preventing the spread of aquatic invasive species. Please clean your boat and equipment of sediment, aquatic plants, and water to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. Be a good steward. Please clean, drain, and dry your watercrafts between ports of entry at various water bodies. Here is a webinar to learn even more about identification, surveying techniques, and reporting of aquatic invasive species. On May 5th at 6:30 p.m., as part of this Lake Friendly Living Awareness Week, Cornell Cooperative Extension of Yates County's Laura Bailey will give her presentation on aquatic invasive species. During this and subsequent slides, I will expand upon additional opportunities posed throughout the Lake Friendly Living Awareness Week. We want that will be a citizen scientist. On May 3rd at 7 p.m., Frank Moses, Executive Director of the Skaneateles Lake Association, will present on what you can do to advance science from your home and around the lake. Lake-friendly living practices are important for businesses too. And on May 6th at 7 p.m., Scott Osborne, owner of Fox Run Winery, and John Santos, vineyard manager of Hazlitt's Winery, will be joined with Michael Thomas Warren to talk about the important practices their businesses are doing to protect our lakes. Just last week, on April 28th, the New York State Assembly passed a resolution commemorating the Finger Lakes community's celebration of lake-friendly living this first week of May. Pictured is our complete list, almost complete list, of scheduled presentations offered during this Lake-Friendly Living Awareness Week. Please visit the Lake-Friendly Living Coalition of the Finger Lakes website to access additional information and register for forthcoming presentations. We are finalizing our details for the Lake Friendly Living Awareness Week keynote speaker that will be held this Friday, and we will inform all registrants and update the registration page on the website as well when we finalize all details. The Lake Friendly Living Pledge Program, through recommended practices for adoption, is really the backbone of our efforts to advance land and water resource conservation at watershed scale. An example of the pledge form is on the left of this slide. Many resources are available on the Lake Friendly Living websites provided by each lake organization. Please start with the Lake Friendly Living Coalition's website through the Finger Lakes Regional Watershed Alliance to learn more and to access our lake organizations and take the pledge. The website information is provided below at the bottom of the slide. Let's start practicing. Please be an ambassador and talk to your friends and neighbors so we can all be lake friendly. We hope to increase our lake friendly living pledges by 500 pledges across the region by the end of our Awareness Week. Again, please visit our Lake Association's Lake Friendly Living page and take the Lake Friendly Living Pledge today. This is our call to action. Be an ambassador and encourage your friends and neighbors to all be lake friendly. Thank you. Many thanks for attending this webinar, and we sincerely hope you will join us for more throughout the course of this week. With that, this is the end of today's webinar, and we have provided the chat box for questions and comments you might like to share. And I know that my presenter co-hosts are doing their best to move forward with answering your